First of all, welcome to Greenland, and thank you so much for giving us some of your time. Just to get a quick introduction of who you are. Your name is Malcolm Nance. You've been a career intelligence collector for the US Navy in the war against terrorism and have at least 36 years of experience with how the US intelligence apparatus works. In the Danish media articles, I can see that you referred to a CIA agent and also sometimes a former spy. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Not a CIA officer, by the way. There are no agents. There's only officers. No, but I worked in naval intelligence, cryptologic intelligence, a subordinate agency to the National Security Agency. So according to most people in the world, that pretty much covers the types of intelligence operations you would expect. And certainly with the way the situation is unfolding in Greenland now, the principal agencies that have been tasked, according to the Wall Street Journal, were the CIA, the NSA, and the Defense Intelligence Agency, in which naval intelligence falls under 2 out of 3 of those agencies.
Mm-hmm. And what brings you to Greenland at this moment of time?
Well, I really wish I was coming to kayak and go see the ice fjords in Ilulissat, which I did some of that. But now I have a very popular podcast in the United States, the Black Man Spy podcast. I was a former analyst for MSNBC television. So my job as the counterterrorism and intelligence analyst was to be sort of explainer-in-chief in U.S. news media of how the intelligence process works. And so now we have this crisis, it appears, between my country, the United States, and really it's not the people of the United States. It's the President of the United States and his staff. That crisis between Greenland, Denmark, NATO, is now becoming less of a discussion and more of a real critical incident that we're all trying to avoid. At least half of us are trying to avoid. And so for me to understand that, I can't sit in New York, I can't go to Washington, I need to come to Greenland, and I need to meet the people, I need to see the culture, I need to see the terrain, feel the weather, and go through the geography. And this is what a real intelligence analyst or a collector would really need to do, because any idiot can sit in another country and give an opinion. I don't do that. So my perspective is to explain to that constituency and to explain to the people in the armed forces whose mothers and fathers are concerned that their sons or daughters might have to come to Nuuk, but not as friendlies. So I'm going to explain.
But you also criticized the Trump administration, and you've been a critic of what they're doing right now with amping up some of the intelligence gathering. Can you speak a little bit about what is your stance on this topic?
Well, first, I'm going to make this really clear, okay? I'm a critic of Donald Trump because I have a very, very low tolerance to stupidity. And I'm not saying that to be curt or to be funny. My career was grounded in collecting, investigating, and bringing the truth as it is seen, as it is heard, as it is processed together, so that American citizens, our NATO allies, would not be surprised, hurt, or killed. That was my job in the U.S. intelligence community. I take great pride in that. So when I left, I left the military, I became a contractor, an intelligence contractor for the United States government. Then I became a writer and a news media analyst. The job doesn't change, right? And another thing is, I'm not a journalist. I'm a spy that talks on television. So I'm going to treat you the exact same way I would treat my commanders or the president or anyone else. I will give you the truth. I will tell you what I've seen, what I believe based on my full body of experience. I will not lie to you. And if you don't like it, that's just too bad. And with Donald Trump, we learned very, very early on in 2016, he lives in a world of a completely different reality than most adults. He lives in a world where lies are acceptable. The truth can be changed to whatever you want, and you can act on those lies and that mistruth and hurt people. I won't do that. And so it quickly became a critic of Donald Trump because I clearly saw that his relationship with Russia to America was toxic, that he would lie to the American public's face. He doesn't believe in the intelligence community or any of the things. He doesn't know how to read, really. He's a functional illiterate. And he will believe any person that comes in who comes from money before he will believe the hundreds of thousands of people who are collecting accurate information and puts it in front of his face. He'll take it, throw it in the trash. Now, with the second administration, it's completely unleashed. He's off the chain. He has put in people in the intelligence community, starting with the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who should never have been in the job, who should not be around, and he doesn't believe anything we say. So when a person like me comes to Greenland as a writer, as an analyst, as an investigator, however you want to call me, that's one thing, because I'm going to tell the public, because that's my job.
And let's talk about that, because there has been this story, as you're also saying, from the Wall Street Journal,
right.
Based on 2 anonymous sources, that Tulsi Gabbard has issued this statement for the CIA, the NSA, and the DIA to amp up the intelligence gathering in Greenland, specifically on the independence movement, on the mining sector, and the relationship and opinions between Greenlanders and the US. What is as you see it, the credibility of this story?
Well, the story is 100% credible.
And how do you know that?
Doesn't mean anything. I mean, whoever said it comes from the world where top secrets are discussed. But when Tulsi Gabbard gets it, it has already come from a decision from the president, through the vice president, to the National Security Council, which at that time was Mike Waltz. All of the senior aides have been discussing it, and then it is pushed down to the Director of National Intelligence. The Director of National Intelligence will send it to the Director of CIA, the Director of the National Security Agency, who, by the way, was recently fired because they believed he was too friendly and too loyal to the law, right? And that a crazy, blogger named Laura Loomer asked the president to fire the director of NSA because a true professional would not take these orders seriously. And then to the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency and the other 14 subordinate intelligence agencies that collect information. So reporting that Tulsi Gabbard has pushed down this order to enhance collection. Look, in this world, the intelligence community, the target of your collection tells you what the mind of the decision maker is about. Opposition to the plan to annex Greenland, the mining sector, and dealing with decision making. Really, the most important information they want to know about is the decision making of your premier and the prime minister in Denmark. No, the Danes will tell them. Your premier goes on television, he'll tell them. They don't want that. They want to know what you will do if this is forced. That's real intelligence.
And we'll get to that. But I've talked with an expert on intelligence gathering.
Sure.
And also an expert in influence campaigns, especially on the digital platforms.
Right.
And a lot of the things that they're telling me is that these opinions, the independence movement, the mining sector, the opinion between the 2 countries, Greenland and the US,
right.
You can make an analysis about that from public information, from Facebook, from social media, and all of these things. So what is the point of making espionage?
Yeah. You're right, and that everything you said is what we call OSINT, open source intelligence, right? Anything I really want to know about the opposition in Greenland, I can read the newspaper here, all right? I can go to Orla Jolson's Twitter feed, his X feed, and see everything. I check his Twitter feed to see the weather in the morning, right?
So what should the intelligence agencies actually work on?
Well, this is my point, is that they are getting orders now because in Trump world, all of this information that we would get generally and generically from open source intelligence, it does not fit his view of what he thinks the reality in Greenland is. So now he's ordering his subordinate, a loyal Trump officer, right, Tulsi Gabbard, to turn on the machine of our hundreds of billions of dollars of intelligence collection to give him an answer he thinks he wants. Now, true intelligence officers are going to go, what does Orla Jolison say, right? And they will use the machine. They'll bring in human intelligence. They'll go to State Department. They will find all the cables about what the Danish government says. And then, if ordered to target government officials, they can do that. But let me tell you something. I work principally for the National Security Agency, right? That is an enormous machine, enormous. But there is one thing about NSA I will say above all other agencies. They are loyal to the people of the United States and the Constitution in the United States. And despite what Edward Snowden says, they will not break the law. Now, can
you imagine why that's a hard thing to actually believe, that the agencies that are doing espionage won't break the law? That's kind of the point, isn't it?
No, it's not. I mean, you got to understand, breaking the law, there are very strict parameters about what you can do, right? I know Snowden and WikiLeaks have all tainted that with their opinion. I am a practitioner from these agencies. So what I say, I'm not an academic who's studying this. I've had to do it. And so what I'm saying is, if we're given a stupid order, and this without any question, within the entire history of U.S. intelligence, is pretty close to the stupidest thing that has ever been asked. To spy, if spy is a bad word, right? To increase your collection on mining sector. The intelligence community doesn't collect on the mining sector. We go to the Department of Commerce. The Department of Commerce will go to the, minerals and geology division, and they will ask their foreign partners to gather general information. Mm-hmm. I don't need NSA to spy on that. That's ridiculous. Public opinion, same thing. Read the newspapers. Somebody can analyze that. True professionals will see it for what it is. But you are foreigners. Compared to, the United States, we do collection against foreign entities. But with a NATO ally, there's a special level of care that anyone should exercise. And
there's been speculation from some politicians up here that the Greenlandic politicians is already under surveillance from the U.S. intelligence agencies. Recently, I spoke with a Danish-German historian, Thomas Wegener Friis. He's specializing in intelligence agencies, especially during the Cold War.
Right.
And he, according to him, if the agencies are not, or the consulate are not already trying to observe what the politicians are doing through tapping into the phone lines or through their social media, they're doing a bad job and someone needs to be fired. What is your assessment about that?
Well, that depends on the target. It really depends on the target. This place has 57,000 people, all right, turning on multi-billion-dollar intelligence collection assets against the city of 18,000 people to get the opinion of maybe 5 people who really matter. The consular officer at the embassy could do a better job by calling them up and having a coffee. It would be almost like ignoring the reason. State Department is an intelligence agency too, right? Diplomats themselves all speak to people, they talk around things, they collect information, they have an intelligence analysis division that makes the Secretary of the State smarter. That is true in raw information that you can look, right, the premier in the eye and say, listen, what's your opinion on mining? And he will come and tell you exactly what he thinks. Oftentimes, it is not going to be couched in diplomatic speak. It has been very frank here. So when I hear someone say, well, I want covert intelligence collection. What are you going to do? You're going to sit in the cafes all day and listen to people's opinion? Number one, find me an American that speaks Danish. Number two, find me an American that speaks Greenlandic. Neither. You're not going to find them. Maybe one or two, a young soldier in the army whose family's from Wisconsin who comes from a Danish background. Greenlandic, zero. Zero. So now we have a little problem of language, right? If you want to foil U.S., if the editor-in-chief of the newspaper, who I understand has been concerned, wants to foil U.S. intelligence collection, just speak your language in your own dialect, and even a computer won't be able to keep up with it.
But so you don't assess that the politicians, the member of parliament or the government are being observed by the intelligence agencies?
It would literally be a waste of our time.
How come?
Because one, the systems that we use are not cheap. Everything comes down to a human being, right? So if I want an opinion of a member of parliament here, you're already out on television telling me every word that I want to hear. If you just want me to go through the motion and say, okay, I want you to target the members of parliament. Okay, the first thing, you got to get their phone numbers. The consular officer will do that. Okay, we get your phone numbers. And then I have to put that into the big machine that must turn off terrorists, people trying to acquire an atomic bomb in Iran, Houthi rebels firing ballistic missiles, breaking 20% of the global shipping, the Russians who are invading Ukraine. I have to turn systems off to do this. That tells me you either don't respect the dangers in this world, or an idiot is ordering me to do it. And that idiot is Donald Trump. Not joking. It would be much simpler to just read the papers.
But also the expert, and we'll have an article out on that, not in a short amount of time.
Sure.
But Thomas Wegener-Friis, the historian of intelligence, well, he also alluded to, if you want to gather information, what would you do with that information? Historically, right. He said that information would be, the difference between a spy and a diplomat would be that the spy or the intelligence officer would say, okay, I have this information, I know the weak point of the people I want to influence. Right. And if I can influence one person in Nutaarsiassat, our parliament, or in our government, that would be a huge gain for maybe the United States if they could influence just one person in parliament because there are so few members. What is your assessment about that? Because it looks like, as you're saying, that won't happen at all.
So there are various types of intelligence. Human intelligence can be either covert, clandestine, as you see the CIA, where we create sources and those sources bring us the information. It's not like James Bond, right? A CIA officer will not be going in and pretending to be a member of parliament or a friend of his, right? We'll get someone who knows someone and he'll tell us. A diplomat does the exact same thing, knowing that these, what we call rumor intelligence, rumint, right? The talk that you hear in a coffee shop or a private conversation will be reported back secretly back to the State Department. They also have the official line that they have to report back through cables to the State Department. Two entirely different things. Signals intelligence, which is what NSA does and other agencies do with land, sea, air, space-based sensors. Their job is to collect lots of raw data that still has to be analyzed. But, you know, the point is, whatever the target that they have set for us, if it is interest in the mining sector, you could dedicate all 17 U.S. intelligence entities to that. And the person who's going to get that to you, the real accurate information, is the person who has a copy of the International Mining News magazine. You are not going to get it from the Coast Guard.
But do you understand why it sounds like you're saying two different things? That on the one hand, we should take Donald Trump very seriously, and the Tulsi Gabbard's statement about trying to gather more intelligence information about Greenland very seriously, because that plays into the whole plan of annexation, and that he's actually maybe serious about this.
Correct.
And on the other hand, you're saying, well, they won't really do a good job, and that will just be like, you can read the newspaper and you can find these things out. They won't tap the phones of the politicians. So can you see why that message can be a little bit hard to understand?
It's hard to understand because you're not seeing the two tiers, or you actually see the two tiers. There is a political tier. Trump, Vice President, National Security Council, Elon Musk, other advisors, and people who really want Greenland. That is the political body of the United States. The professional body of the United States intelligence community are the 100,000 people, little old ladies you wouldn't recognize going into going into the Buseni. You would not recognize them. You'd swear they were just some old 70-year-old tourist from Washington, D.C. These people are very serious. They are career analysts, collectors, processors, and they will give you what you ask. But if it's something that wastes time, resources, money, they will give you the minimums. And you're going to say, well, isn't that the deep state? No, that is professionalism. Because Greenland is not a national security priority to the people who have to do the job. By the way, I believe the public opinion polls are 85%, 86% of Americans think that this whole Greenland talk is ridiculous. So the American people don't support this at all. But whatever is in Donald Trump's mind, he has clearly made a decision about it, and he has now pushed it down to the action officers in his cabinet.
So how worried should the population here in Greenland be about this news of espionage?
The way I describe it is, one, you cannot let Donald Trump determine your way of life and your daily actions, right? I don't let terrorists do that, decide whether I travel, right? Same thing with this. You have a 95% chance here that all of this is talk. But it's like going out to sea on a fishing boat, right? You're going from here in a small boat up to Mensuk. You still have to account that the weather may not go in your favor. You may have missed something in maintenance. You don't forget the life jackets. You always have the life jacket. So there's 5% here where I think your government needs to take this extremely seriously and to have a contingency ready, to have their opinions ready. But the key question you need to ask yourself is, seriously, if this turns into a real crisis, what will you in this city, if Donald Trump loses his mind and decides he doesn't care about NATO, he doesn't care about the European Union, he doesn't care about treaties or sovereignty, he is going to take Greenland. He could have 200 soldiers, 300 soldiers here in 8 hours, and you wouldn't know until the plane is landing at Nuuk Airport. Not the ones with the red tails. Those are the good Air Force airplanes.
So it sounds like your kind of advice for the politicians up here is not so much of looking into espionage and figuring out how are they being surveilled, but more looking into how can we actually physically, realistically push back on the Americans.
Well, there's a very easy way to show that. If you're really upset about this, hit the streets. Protest. You had a protest at the consulate here in Nuuk, right?
There's also been talks about, 2 weeks ago on these very couches, I had an interview with the former White House staff member, Trump advisor, Drew Horn, now director of Greenland, that wants to invest $10 billion in Greenland, in our energy sector, in our mining sector, in our fishing sector. And one of the things that has been talked about is, well, the government up here says we're open for business.
Sure.
But how much should we be worried about dealing with the Americans in this situation right now, compared to the threat of maybe there are hidden consequences?
Mm-hmm. Hidden consequences is a very good phrase. I watched that interview. I thought you were great, by the way. I thought you asked very, very fair questions. And I think that he tried to get a balance between, like he said, his previous job working for the administration, people may have the view that he is, looking to do something for them, whereas he is looking out for his investors, right? What you need to ask yourself is, prior to 100 days ago, was that 100 or that $10 billion on the table? Did somebody come here a year ago and under Joe Biden's administration or 2 years ago and say, hey, we want to invest $10 billion in Greenland, in your fishery sector, your mining sector, your, getting 2 or 3 new ferries to go up and down the coast, which I would, if I were president, I would make sure you had some good ferries. And what is the purpose of this immediate sudden interest? Where's this money coming from? $10 billion. Let me tell you something, $10 billion is almost nothing. The United States spent $4 billion on the last election alone. Kamala Harris raised $1 billion in less than 30 days. So that kind of money in America is not considered particularly big money. It's big here, but what is the interest of these investors? Investments are made on the basis of stability. They are not made on the basis of crisis. They're not looking to buy this country. Investors are going to come where they think they're going to have the next 10, 15 years of stable investment, right? Which means under whose guidance, whose authority, whose leadership. He kept using the phrase independent Greenland, and I felt that that was politically loaded.
How so?
Well, everyone wants Greenland to have the option to have their own autonomy, right? Their own right to self-determination. But I kept, as a professional, right? I kept thinking, you are either pushing the Greenlanders need to have a referendum and vote, and maybe they'll be their own country, and we can bring in our money, and that will align with what Donald Trump's doing. Maybe not. But the kind of money that he's talking about, why the tsunami of, I have a lot of money, I'm going to make you all rich. I've heard that phrase before, and it came from the White House. So I won't say that I would be cautious. I would be concerned with anyone who comes with giant bags of money to see about whether they're going to respect you, your culture, and your decision making.
What should what is your professional assessment as an intelligence officer? What should we look out for?
Well, it's like Ronald Reagan said, you need to trust but verify. If they are serious players, they are not serious players because of the current political environment. If they've suddenly come up because Donald Trump Jr. or Steve Bannon or Donald Trump himself have said Greenland is now a priority for America's national security, and people start coming in and bearing gifts, so to speak, this is what your parliament is for. This is what your public opinion is for. Everyone would like to have new, better fishing vessels. Greenland's fishing community is I believe it's your largest industry. That would be awesome. But the question you need to ask is not who, what, when, where, or how. You need to ask why. Why is the key word that all intelligence professionals want the answer to. Because we can collect the rest of that information. But that is always in the why is always in the mind of the person who is you're speaking to or who is speaking to you, right? It's like the question we ask here. Why are you here, Malcolm? I'm here to help. I'm here to explain. Why is someone walking in with a $10 billion bag of money? Maybe they see Greenland as the fruitful, bountiful place that it is. But I've also seen the ice cap. Okay, mining, doing extraction here, some of it's happening down near Katortuk in the south, great. Airstrips need to be extended. Aircraft will have to come here in large numbers. Helicopter facilities, hotelier, all of these things would have to be expanded on an enormous industrial scale, right? For what I'm hearing from the tech billionaires in Washington, D.C., they are looking at Greenland as some sort of jewel to be taken and exploited. It has nothing to, I'm going to tell you straight, nothing to do with the national security of the United States. So I do not see what private conversations Donald Trump is having with these people and investors and billionaires. But whatever conversation they're having, Donald Trump has made a decision that he's going to have it. And that is where you need to be concerned. The one thing he doesn't want, he does not want this city or country rising up in protest. He does not want a display of rejection. He is false. I think he believes that if he comes in with money, he can buy you and your opinion. I can tell you right now, I've written 4 New York Times best-selling books about him. He believes every fantasy that's in his head. It does not reflect reality.
I think let's have that as a closing statement.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.